He had the kind of career people dream about, talent that scorched the screen and a presence you felt before he spoke. Al Pacino didn't just perform, he burned. Every stare, every pause felt like a confession. From The Godfather to Scent of a Woman. He didn't build a resume, he built a monument brick by brick from hunger, genius, and old wounds. And then there was Diane Keaton, sun-washed California on the outside, quiet steel within. From Annie Hall to Reds, she made awkwardness feel brave and honesty feel glamorous. She didn't chase fame. She reframed it, proving that sincerity can be louder than spectacle. When they met, it wasn't just a romance. It was two very different storms choosing the same sky. He was voltage, she was warmth, and for nearly 20 years, their bond lived between fact and legend. Today, we revisit the story, how it began, why it broke, and why it never really ended. Alfredo James Pacino was born April 25, 1940, to a Sicilian family with big dreams and thin margins. When his father left, a hole opened that applause could never fill. His mother Rose took him to the South Bronx, where winter crept through the windows, and rent notices felt like roommates. Theaters became refuge. In the dark, under the flicker of old film, the shadows on the screen were kinder than the ones at home. By 10, he'd already learned pain, the kind that leaves a scar and a memory. By 13, he was sunny, funny, restless, already tempted by escapes that take more than they give. By 17, school was done, odd jobs began, and nights got longer. 3 friends he grew up with didn't make it to 20. He did, because he found acting, HB Studio. The actor studio, Lee Strasberg. He learned that chaos could be shaped and loneliness could be used. At 22, he was still freezing in cheap rooms and sneaking naps in empty theaters, but the work was oxygen. 1968 brought The Indian Wants the Bronx and an Obie Award. 1969, Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie? And a Tony. It wasn't comfort. It was confirmation. The invisible kid had finally been seen. Diane Keaton was born January 5, 1946, in Los Angeles. Her father, Jack Hall, was steady. Her mother, Dorothy Deanne Keaton Hall, Mrs. Los Angeles, 1955, glowed with a dream she wasn't allowed to chase. The family was loving, but quiet. Feelings lived under the tablecloth. Diane watched, learned, and promised herself not to disappear. She dropped Hall and took her mother's maiden name, Keaton, as a tribute. Then she left for New York with a suitcase, 2 scripts, and a stubborn kind of courage. The apartment was small, the radiator useless, and auditions unforgiving. She waited tables by day, sang in smoky rooms at night, and kept going. 1968 brought Hair on Broadway. She didn't fit a template, and that was the point. The stage didn't just give her a job, it gave her a voice, a dim soundstage. Dust in the light. 2 rising actors, not yet icons. Al Pacino, coiled and quiet. Diane Keaton, bright and disarming. They were filming what would become The Godfather. He as Michael Corleone, she as Kay Adams. They started as scene partners and became something else. Partners in the quiet. She teased him out of his shell. He led her into a silence he didn't share easily. The chemistry wasn't manufactured. It spilled off the edges of the frame. Crew members didn't talk about retakes. They talked about electricity. The studio didn't want Pacino. Too small, too unknown? Francis Ford Coppola fought for him anyway. To settle the argument, they filmed the restaurant scene early, the one with the gun in the bathroom. Under humming lights, Pacino played it like a man bottling a storm. When the shots went off, Hollywood stopped arguing. He limped off set with a damaged knee and kept working. The performance changed his life, but it didn't exactly make him happy. When award season labeled him supporting, he skipped the ceremony. Victory can feel lonely when it arrives late and labeled wrong. On that same set, the bond with Keaton deepened. She was ease where he was tension. Off camera, he actually laughed. Not often, but with her, it felt safe. 73 brought Serpico. Pacino lived in the skin of a man who refused to bend, and it took a piece of him with it. Years later, 1983 gave him Scarface, a role so explosive it scared him a little. A prop blast burned his hand. Critics scorched the film. Time would reverse that verdict. He kept his head down and worked. 1992, Scent of a Woman. He learned to move by sound and touch, not sight. He finally held the Oscar that had dodged him for decades. He looked proud and emptied out. That's the price of carrying other people's pain well enough to make it feel true. Between these peaks, Pacino stayed loyal to the craft, looking for Richard, 1996, Chinese Coffee, 2000, and service at the actor's studio. The boy who had slept in theaters was now helping others survive the same storm. The Godfather, 1972, gave Diane Keaton stature. Annie Hall, 1977, made her an icon and won her an Oscar. The charm wasn't decoration, it was bravery. She delivered imperfection like a revelation, but success comes with quiet costs. Sleep gets short, pressure gets loud. Reds, 1981, demanded everything she had, and she gave it. When the wave crested and some films cooled in the 1980s, she didn't fold. She wrote, she directed, she chose projects that cared more about truth than trend. The applause faded. The work stayed. That was enough. From 1972 to 1981, they were not just co-stars. They were a story people believed in. He called her light. She called him one of a kind. They didn't perform romance for cameras. They cooked burnt pasta, argued about movies, slipped notes into scripts, and built a life in the hours nobody filmed. But fame stretches time and thins patience. Shoots overseas, missed calls. Letters returned late or not at all. She wanted marriage. He wasn't built for permanence yet. Not then. The end didn't come with a fight. It came with a quiet bag, a soft door, and rain blurring a sidewalk. Years later he'd say, I wasn't ready for her love. She'd answer, he broke my heart, but he didn't mean to. No villains. Just two people at different distances from the same future. They kept orbiting each other anyway. 1990, The Godfather Part 3, and there it was again. The old rhythm. The look that lands a beat too long. The ache that never really left. Life is not a movie. Not every story gets a reshoot. Ask him if he regrets not marrying her, and you'll hear the truth in the pause before the words. Every day, ask her about him, and the smile answers first because it felt real. Not perfect, not staged, real. Two titans who carried their childhoods into their art. His forged by the South Bronx, hers by a house that swallowed feelings whole. And met in a space where both could breathe, he turned hunger into stillness you couldn't look away from. She turned shyness into courage you could borrow. Together they made millions believe that in the middle of ambition and noise, gentleness could still win. In this telling, the story reaches October 11th, 2025. Diane Keaton, after years of meeting illness with wit, grit and grace, slips away at 79. Tributes flood in. Broadway dims its lights. Fans leave hats and flowers at old theaters. Clips roll. Annie Hall, The Godfather, Reds. The comment everybody keeps repeating isn't complicated. She never pretended to be perfect, and that made her unforgettable. Somewhere, Al Pacino, 85, stands by a window and says what he can. She was my friend, my light, and a part of me that time could never take. I will love her always. It's not closure. It's truth, because the story of Pacino and Keaton was never about guarantees. It was about reverence. Two lives that crossed, lifted each other, broke a little, and carried on, changed forever. Greatness is endurance. Pacino didn't arrive. He outlasted cold rooms, empty pockets, and doubt. Gentleness is power. Keaton made awkwardness elegant and turned honesty into a brand. Love can be holy without being permanent. Not every great love ends with a ring. Some end with gratitude and keep going as memory. The work saves you. When applause fades, craft remains. So if this story moved you, if you've ever given your heart to someone you couldn't forget, leave a light for Diane Keaton. And a nod for Al Pacino, the kid who survived the Bronx, and the woman who taught the world that awkward could glow. The story isn't over. It just changed form into the films, the lines, the laughter, and the echo they left in all of us.